What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walks onto a morning talk show expecting a normal interview, only to be blindsided by a host who seems more interested in tearing him down than having a conversation? In just 44 seconds, Lara Spencer went from smiling television host to the center of one of the most shocking on-air meltdowns in Good Morning America history. This is the story of how a simple interview turned into an absolute disaster. Tom Hardy walked onto the Good Morning America set that morning like he had done dozens of times before. He was there to promote his latest film, a gritty drama that had been getting incredible reviews. The studio audience clapped as he made his way to the couch, shaking hands with the panel. George Stephanopoulos gave him a warm welcome. Robin Roberts smiled and waved. And then there was Lara Spencer, sitting with her notes, ready to kick things off. The interview started normally enough. George asked Tom about his preparation for the role, and Tom gave a thoughtful answer about the research he had done and the people he had met to understand his character better. Robin jumped in with a question about working with the director, and Tom lit up, talking about the creative process and how much he had learned on set. The audience seemed engaged, leaning forward in their seats. Everything was going smoothly. Then, Lara decided it was her turn to ask a question. "So, Tom," Lara said, her voice dripping with a tone that immediately felt different from the others, "I have to ask, and I think everyone wants to know, do you actually take your acting seriously, or is this all just a paycheck for you at this point?" The studio went quiet. You could hear the audience shifting uncomfortably in their seats. George and Robin exchanged glances, clearly not expecting that kind of question. Tom's expression changed. He had been relaxed, open, enjoying the conversation, but now his jaw tightened. "I'm sorry." "What?" Tom asked, his British accent suddenly sharper, more pronounced. Lara smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that said she knew exactly what she was doing. "Well, I mean, you've done so many action movies, so many big-budget blockbusters. It just seems like maybe you're phoning it in now, you know? Going through the motions." Robin tried to step in. "Lara, I don't think that's..." But Lara kept going. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. I mean, how many times can you play the tough guy before it gets old?" Tom sat back in his chair, and you could see him taking a deep breath, trying to compose himself. "I think you might be confusing commitment with repetition," he said calmly. "Every role I take, I give everything I have. That's not phoning it in. That's called being a professional." George tried to steer things back on track. "Tom, let's talk about the emotional scenes in this film. There's a particular moment in the third act that really stands out." But Lara was not done. She cut George off completely, something you just do not do on live television. "Oh, come on, Tom. Don't be so sensitive. I'm just asking the questions that your fans want answered. Or are you too big of a star now to handle a little criticism?" The audience gasped. Actual gasps. Robin's eyes went wide. George put his hand up as if to say, "Stop," but it was too late. Tom leaned forward, his eyes locked on Lara. "You want to talk about sensitivity? Let's talk about respect. I came here to have a conversation about a film that means a great deal to me and to the people who made it. I did not come here to be insulted by someone who clearly has not watched it and does not care about the work." Lara laughed, actually laughed, like this was all some kind of joke. "Oh, here we go. The actor getting all dramatic. How surprising." "Lara, please," Robin said, her voice firm now, trying to regain control. But Tom was not looking at Robin. He was still staring at Lara, and his voice dropped lower, more serious. "Do you treat all your guests like this? Or am I special?" Lara crossed her arms, her smile fading into something colder. "I treat guests who deserve respect with respect. But when someone comes on this show acting like they're above everyone else, yeah, I'm going to call it out." "Acting like I'm above everyone?" Tom's voice rose slightly, the first crack in his composure. I've been nothing but polite since I walked in here. You're the one who started throwing insults the moment you opened your mouth. George tried again. Okay, let's everyone take a breath here. Tom, we appreciate you being here, and... Lara interrupted him again. George, stop babying him. If he can't handle a tough question, maybe he should not be doing interviews. That was it. That was the moment. Tom stood up. Not quickly, not in a rage, but slowly, deliberately. He reached up and unclipped the microphone from his shirt, the small sound echoing in the now silent studio. Tough question, Tom said, his voice steady, but filled with barely controlled anger. You have not asked me a single tough question. You've just been rude. There's a difference, and if you do not know that, then you have no business sitting in that chair. Robin stood up too, trying to salvage something. Tom, please, let's just... But Tom shook his head. No, Robin, I'm sorry. I have too much respect for myself and for the people who worked on this film to sit here and be treated like this. He looked at George. George, you're a professional. Thank you for trying. Then he looked at Robin. Robin, always a pleasure. He did not look at Lara. Lara's face had gone red now, and she was not smiling anymore. Oh, so you're just going to walk out? Real mature, Tom? Real professional. Tom stopped, turned back, and for a second, it looked like he might say something else. The entire studio held its breath, but instead, he just shook his head, a small, disappointed gesture, and started walking toward the exit. This is ridiculous, Lara said to the cameras, trying to spin it, trying to make herself look reasonable. We ask one challenging question, and he throws a tantrum. That made Tom stop again. He turned around, and this time there was no attempt to hide his frustration. A tantrum. You ambushed me on live television. You insulted my work, my professionalism, and my integrity. And now you're trying to make this about me being difficult? He looked directly into the camera. Anyone watching this can see exactly what happened here. George was standing now too, his hand out, like he was trying to calm a storm. Tom, I think we all just need to... No, George, Tom said, his voice cutting through. I'm done. I'm not going to stand here and let her twist this into something it's not. Lara stood up, her voice getting louder. Twist it? I asked you a legitimate question, and you could not handle it. That's on you, not me. Legitimate? Tom's voice rose to match hers. You asked me if I take my job seriously. You said I'm phoning it in. You called me a sellout in front of millions of people. And you think that's legitimate journalism? The audience was completely silent now. Some people had their phones out, recording. Others just sat frozen, watching this unfold in real time. Robin stepped between them, literally putting herself in the middle. Okay, both of you, stop. This is not helping anyone. But Lara was not backing down. I'm not going to apologize for doing my job, Robin. If he can't handle the heat, he should not have come on the show. Tom let out a bitter laugh. The heat? This is not heat. This is just you being cruel for no reason. And the worst part is, you do not even see it. Oh, I see it, Lara shot back. I see an actor who's so used to everyone kissing his feet that he falls apart the second someone asks him a real question. George finally raised his voice, something he rarely did. Lara, enough. This is not what we do here. But the damage was done. Tom looked at George, then at Robin, and there was something like sadness in his eyes now, not just anger. I'm sorry you had to see this, he said to them. I really am. Then he looked out at the audience. And I'm sorry to all of you. You came here expecting a normal interview, and instead you got this circus. He turned to leave again, and this time Lara called after him. Go ahead and run, Tom. That's what you're good at, right? Running away when things get tough? Tom froze. His shoulders tensed. For a long moment, he just stood there, his back to the panel, and everyone watching wondered if he was going to turn around and really let her have it. But instead, he just kept walking. He walked past the cameras, past the crew members who were all staring in shock, and straight toward the exit. Lara was still, talking, still trying to justify herself to the camera. I think we all just witnessed what happens when celebrities get too big for their own good. They forget that we're here to ask questions, not just give them free publicity. Robin sat down heavily, her head in her hands. George was talking to someone off camera, probably a producer, his face tight with stress. The audience was buzzing now, people whispering to each other, trying to process what they had just seen. And then, just before Tom reached the door, he stopped one last time. He did not turn around fully, just looked back over his shoulder. "You know what the saddest part is?" he said, his voice carrying across the studio. "I actually used to respect this show." And with that, he was gone. The door closed behind him with a quiet click that somehow felt louder than any of the shouting that had come before. The studio stayed silent for what felt like forever. Lara sat back down, her arms still crossed, her face still red. She looked at the camera and tried to smile, tried to act like everything was fine. "Well," she said, her voice forced and brittle, "that was certainly unexpected." George would not look at her. He was shuffling papers, clearly trying to figure out how to move forward. Robin just shook her head slowly, staring at the empty seat where Tom had been sitting just minutes before. "We'll be right back after this break," George said to the camera, and his voice was tight, professional, but you could hear the strain underneath. The second the cameras cut, the studio erupted. Audience members were talking all at once. Crew members were rushing around, and Lara just sat there, her smile finally dropping, looking around like she could not understand why everyone seemed so upset. Robin turned to her, and her voice was quiet, but firm. "What were you thinking?" Lara's defenses went up immediately. "I was doing my job, Robin. I was asking tough questions." "Tough questions?" Robin repeated, and there was disbelief in her voice. "Lara, you attacked him. From the very first question, you attacked him." "I did not attack him," Lara insisted. "I challenged him. There's a difference." George finally looked up from his papers. "No, Robin's right. That was not a challenge. That was hostile from the start." Lara looked between them, and for the first time, something like doubt flickered across her face. "You're both overreacting. He's the one who walked out. He's the one who made a scene." "He walked out because you gave him no choice," Robin said. "You backed him into a corner on live television." A producer rushed over, headset on, clipboard in hand. "What just happened? We've got social media blowing up. People are furious." Lara stood up, defensive. "Furious at him, right? For walking out?" The producer stared at her. "No, Lara. Furious at you. They're saying you ambushed him. They're saying you were disrespectful and out of line." The color drained from Lara's face. "That's not... I was just..." But nobody was listening anymore. George was talking to the producer about how to handle the rest of the show. Robin was on her phone, probably texting someone, her expression troubled, and Lara just stood there in the middle of the chaos she had created, finally starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, she had crossed a line. In the green room backstage, Tom was gathering his things. His publicist was there, talking rapidly on her phone, doing damage control. But Tom was calm now, calmer than he had been on the set. He had said what he needed to say. He had stood up for himself, and he had done it without losing his dignity, even when someone had tried very hard to take it from him. "Are you okay?" his publicist asked when she hung up. Tom nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine. Is the car ready? It's waiting out back. Tom, I've never seen anything like that on live television. Neither have I, Tom said quietly, and I hope I never do again. Back in the studio, they were coming back from commercial break. George and Robin were alone at the desk now. Lara had been quietly moved off set, though nobody watching at home would know that yet. George looked into the camera, his face serious. Welcome back to Good Morning America. Before we continue with the show, I want to address what just happened. Our interview with Tom Hardy took an unexpected turn, and I want to apologize to our viewers and to Tom for how that unfolded. That is not the standard of conversation we strive for here. Robin nodded beside him. We pride ourselves on respectful dialogue with our guests, and this morning we fell short of that. We're sorry. It was a careful statement, professional, not throwing Lara under the bus completely, but making it clear that something had gone wrong. And somewhere, probably in a lot of places, people were watching and nodding, agreeing that yes, something had definitely gone wrong. Tom's car pulled away from the studio, and he looked out the window at the building getting smaller in the distance. His phone was blowing up with messages from friends, colleagues, people in the industry who had seen what happened. Most of them were supportive, telling him he had handled it well, that he had been right to walk out. One message made him smile, just a little. It was from an actor friend. Mate, that was the most dignified exit I've ever seen. She tried to destroy you, and you didn't let her. Respect. Tom typed back. Just tried to be honest. Couldn't sit there and take it. The response came immediately. And you shouldn't have had to. Everyone can see what really happened. And that was the thing. Everyone could see. There was no ambiguity here. No, he said, she said. It had all happened on live television, in front of cameras and a studio audience. There was no way to spin it. No way to rewrite what had actually occurred. Lara had started the interview with an insult disguised as a question. She had doubled down when called out. She had dismissed Tom's work, his professionalism, his entire career, all while smiling like it was perfectly acceptable behavior. And when he had finally had enough and stood up for himself, she had tried to paint him as the problem. But it had not worked, because everyone watching had eyes and ears. They had seen a respected actor come onto a show ready to have a conversation about his work. They had seen a host decide, for whatever reason, to turn that conversation into an ambush. And they had seen that actor make the choice to walk away rather than continue to be disrespected. It was not about being unable to handle tough questions. Tom had done hundreds of interviews, had been asked challenging things before, had discussed difficult topics and controversial aspects of his films and his life. He knew how to handle real journalism. This had not been journalism. This had been someone using their platform to tear someone down. And when Tom had not played along, when he had not sat there and taken it with a smile, Lara had gotten even meaner, even more personal. Back at the studio, in some office somewhere, producers were probably having emergency meetings. How do we handle this? What do we say? How do we move forward? Because this was not just a bad interview. This was not just an awkward moment that would be forgotten by tomorrow. This was something that would be talked about, analyzed, broken down, frame by frame. And the conclusion people would reach, again and again, was simple. Lara Spencer had been out of line, and Tom Hardy had been right to leave. In the green room where Tom had been just a short time ago, someone was probably already cleaning up, erasing the evidence that he had ever been there. His water glass, his chair, the small plate of fruit that had been set out for him, and that he had never touched. But you cannot erase what happened in that studio. You cannot take back words once they are spoken on live television. You cannot undo the moment when a host decides to attack instead of interview, and you cannot undo the moment when a guest decides they have had enough. Tom's car drove through the city, taking him away from Good Morning America, away from the chaos, away from Lara Spencer, and her forced smiles and her cutting words. He had walked onto that set as a professional, ready to do his job. He had walked off that set as someone who had stood up for himself, who had drawn a line and said, "No, I will not be treated this way." And somewhere, Lara was probably realizing that she had made a mistake, that she had let whatever was going on in her head, whatever made her think that approach was acceptable, cost her something: her credibility, her reputation, the respect of her colleagues and her audience. Because at the end of the day, it does not matter if you are a morning show host or a Hollywood actor, or anyone else. Respect matters. Kindness matters. And when you forget that, when you decide that your platform gives you the right to tear someone else down, eventually there are consequences. Tom Hardy had given Lara Spencer 44 seconds to course correct, to realize what she was doing, to pull back and return to normal interview territory. 44 seconds from that first insulting question to his decision to stand up and walk away. 44 seconds where she could have apologized, could have acknowledged that maybe she had started off on the wrong foot, could have shown even the smallest bit of professionalism or grace. Instead, she had doubled down, tripled down. She had thrown insult after insult, had questioned his professionalism, his talent, his integrity, and she had done it all with cameras rolling, with an audience watching, with her colleagues sitting right next to her trying to stop the train wreck. And now it was over. The interview was done. Tom was gone. And what remained was the footage, the reactions, the analysis that would come from everyone who had watched or would watch it later. The story would be told and retold. Clips would be shared. Think pieces would be written. But the basic facts would never change. A host had been cruel to a guest. The guest had stood up for himself. And everyone watching had seen exactly what happened and who was at fault. Tom looked out the car window at the city passing by, at people going about their normal days, unaware of what had just happened in that television studio. His publicist was still on her phone, still managing the situation, but Tom felt oddly calm. He had done the right thing. He knew it in his bones. Sometimes walking away is not running away. Sometimes it is the bravest thing you can do. Sometimes refusing to participate in your own humiliation is an act of strength, not weakness. And sometimes, just sometimes, standing up and saying, "I deserve better than this," is exactly the right move. Tom Hardy had made that move. He had walked off the Good Morning America set with his head high, his dignity intact, and his conscience clear. And that, in the end, was what mattered most. The car turned a corner, and the ABC building disappeared from view entirely. Whatever happened next, whatever fallout came from this, Tom knew he could handle it. Because he had handled this. He had been tested in a way he had not expected when he woke up that morning, and he had passed that test. He had been the good guy in a situation designed to make him look bad. He had been professional when someone else had been petty. He had been honest when someone else had been manipulative. And everyone who watched would know it. 44 seconds. That is all it took for everything to fall apart. 44 seconds from Lara's first question to the moment Tom decided he was done. Not because he could not handle criticism. Not because he was too sensitive or too proud or too anything. But because he recognized disrespect when he saw it, and he chose not to accept it. And somewhere, in living rooms and offices and coffee shops all over the country, people who had watched it happen were nodding in agreement, saying to each other, "Good for him. Good for him for not just sitting there and taking it. Good for him for knowing his worth. Good for him for walking away." Because that is what heroes do. They stand up. They speak truth. And when necessary, they walk away from situations that do not serve them, no matter how much pressure there is to stay and smile and pretend everything is fine. Tom Hardy had been that hero. Not in a movie, not playing a character, but in real life, on live television, in front of millions of people, He had shown what it looks like to maintain your integrity, even when someone is trying very hard to take it from you. And that, more than any film role, more than any scripted moment, was what people would remember. The day Tom Hardy said enough, stood up, and walked away. The day he chose himself over the show. The day he proved that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to participate in your own diminishment. The car drove on, carrying Tom away from the studio, away from the confrontation, toward whatever came next. And behind him, in that studio, the chaos continued. But it was not his chaos anymore. He had left it behind, along with his microphone and his seat and any obligation to sit there and be insulted for entertainment. He was free, and Lara Spencer was left to deal with the mess she had created alone.